In the far reaches of the Milky Way, a cosmic secret lay hidden in plain sight. The Galactic Union, a coalition of thousands of advanced civilizations, had thrived for eons, uniting planets under a banner of peace and prosperity. Yet, like all empires, its history was riddled with shadows. One such shadow was the humans, a species whose very existence was both an enigma and a stain on the Union's legacy. Centuries ago, humans were engineered, designed not for peace, but for war. Amidst a brutal conflict with the Krine, a parasitic hive species that consumed entire systems, the Union had grown desperate. Their most brilliant minds turned to bioengineering, creating a race that could think like a tactician and fight like a machine. Humans. Deployed to the front lines, their adaptability and fierce resolve turned the tide of the war. But when the conflict ended, so too did the humans' purpose. The Galactic Union, now facing moral reckoning for its creations, decreed that humans were to be relocated to a reservation planet, Earth. Cut off from the galactic community, they were abandoned, their advanced knowledge erased, their history rewritten as myths and legends. Over millennia, humanity forgot its engineered origins, evolving independently under the watchful but silent gaze of the Union. But the silence would not last. Commander Eris, a historian and observer from the Union's Etherian race, was tasked with the Millennium check-in on Earth. It was a ceremonial duty, largely administrative, as Earth was considered a backwater planet with no galactic significance. Previous reports had noted humans as a curious but harmless species, their progress stunted compared to the Union's vast technological superiority. As Eris's ship neared the Sol system, his sensors lit up with anomalies. Artificial satellites orbited the planet, a primitive yet undeniable sign of technological advancement. Atmospheric scans showed elevated radioactive levels, indicating potential nuclear activity. This was not the Earth he'd read about in dusty archives. Curiosity turned to alarm as his ship's long-range sensors detected an unexpected presence in Earth's orbit. A small fleet of metallic crafts, their movements precise and deliberate. These ships bore no resemblance to the crude vessels recorded in the Union's last observation. They were sleek, agile, and brimming with energy signatures that rivaled lower-tier Union technology. Aris's ship coasted into Earth's upper orbit, its cloaking shields masking his presence. As he calibrated his sensors for closer observation, a sudden alert blared through his console. His ship had been locked onto by multiple weapon systems. Before he could react, a voice crackled through his communication array, speaking in flawless Etherian. "Unknown vessel. Identify yourself immediately." Eris froze. The voice carried authority, confidence, and a distinct human cadence. His mission had just become far more complicated than he ever imagined. Commander Eris's mind raced as he processed the transmission. The voice, unmistakably human, spoke his language with a fluency that shouldn't have been possible. How had a species cut off from galactic knowledge and technology managed to develop such advanced systems, let alone learn Etherian? And who were they to challenge a cloaked vessel from the Galactic Union? "Unknown vessel," the voice repeated, sharper this time. "You have 10 seconds to comply or we will consider you hostile." Eris scrambled to respond. He deactivated his cloaking field, revealing his ship, a sleek, crystalline craft designed more for observation than combat. His diplomatic instincts kicked in as he opened a channel to respond. "This is Commander Eris of the Galactic Union conducting a routine survey. I mean no harm." A tense silence followed before another transmission came through. "Commander Eris, you are in restricted Earth airspace. Lower your shields and prepare to be escorted to a secure facility. Failure to comply will result in your immediate neutralization." "Neutralization?" Eris's feathers ruffled in alarm. This was not the fractured, primitive humanity of past reports. These humans were coordinated, armed, and clearly capable of defending their territory. Eris complied, lowering his shields as instructed. Almost instantly, his ship was flanked by 3 sleek human crafts. Their designs were striking, sleek and angular with a faint blue glow emanating from their propulsion systems. The ships maneuvered with precision, guiding him toward an orbiting station that dwarfed even his expectations. The structure was a marvel, bristling with antennas, weapons platforms, and docking bays. It rivaled smaller Union outposts in scale and sophistication. As his ship docked, Eris felt a wave of unease. This was no ordinary encounter. The humans had surpassed expectations in ways the Union had never anticipated. The docking bay hissed open, revealing a group of uniformed figures waiting for him. At their head was a tall woman with a commanding presence, her silver hair gleaming under the station's artificial lights. Her uniform bore no insignia Eris recognized, but her bearing screamed authority. "Commander Eris," she said, her voice cold but measured. "Welcome to the Helios Defense Station. I am General Elena Caro. You'll accompany me." Eris stepped out cautiously, his sharp eyes scanning the bay. Human soldiers, armed with energy weapons, stood at attention. Their postures were disciplined, their eyes sharp. These were not the aimless tribes of humanity's past. These were warriors. "General Caro," Eris began, choosing his words carefully. "I come in peace. My mission is strictly observational." "Spare me the pleasantries," Caro interrupted, her gaze piercing. "The Galactic Union abandoned us centuries ago. Now you show up unannounced, cloaked and armed. You'll explain yourself fully once we've reached the briefing room." The walk through the station was a revelation. Eris couldn't help but marvel at the advancements these humans had made. The walls were lined with displays showcasing maps of the solar system, tactical simulations, and streams of data. Engineers worked on ships that looked to rival low-tier Union vessels, while scientists in white coats analyzed holographic projections of what appeared to be alien artifacts. The briefing room was stark but functional. Caro gestured for Eris to sit at a central table. Around him, several high-ranking officers and advisors took their seats, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Commander Eris," Caro began, her voice steady but firm, "your arrival here is no coincidence. We've known for decades that the Galactic Union might return. What we didn't expect was that you'd come alone. So tell us, why now? What has the Union sent you to observe?" Eris hesitated, weighing his options. The humans had clearly evolved far beyond what the Union believed possible. But how much should he reveal? And more importantly, could he afford to underestimate them? "You misunderstand," Eris said finally. "I wasn't sent here with malicious intent. My mission is part of a long-standing protocol to ensure Earth remains stable." Caro's eyes narrowed. "Stable? You mean to say the Union has been monitoring us all this time?" "Observing," Eris corrected, not interfering. The room erupted in murmurs, but Caro silenced them with a raised hand. "Observing," she repeated, her tone dripping with skepticism. "And yet, you didn't notice when we built this," she gestured to the station around them. "Or this," she pointed to a holographic display of Earth's fleet. Eris remained silent, the weight of his misjudgment sinking in. Humanity had not only survived, it had thrived, and now it demanded answers. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Union would have to face the consequences of its actions. The room's tension was palpable. General Caro's piercing gaze bore into Commander Eris, her questions echoing louder than the quiet murmurs among her officers. Eris, an experienced observer of countless species, now found himself utterly unprepared. The humans were not the relics of a forgotten war. They were something new, something formidable. "We've waited centuries for this," Caro said, her voice low but weighted. "We've had scraps of your existence, old transmissions, decayed data logs, all vague, all incomplete. But they hinted at something larger, a council, a union, something that created us and then abandoned us. Now here you are and we want answers." Eris glanced around the table. Each face was etched with determination and curiosity, but not the fear he had expected. These weren't subjects begging for guidance. They were equals, demanding accountability. He took a deep breath. "The Galactic Union was not designed to interfere with developing species, General. Humanity's origins and progress. They were monitored, yes, but your evolution was meant to be your own." Caro's jaw tightened. "Our own? We didn't even know who we were for generations. Entire civilizations rose and fell while you watched. You abandoned us." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Aris felt the weight of her words, the guilt of his species' indifference to what had clearly become a thriving sentient race. "That was not our intent," he said softly. "Earth was never meant to be abandoned. It was meant to be protected." "Protected?" One of the officers, a younger man with dark eyes and a sharp voice, scoffed. "From what? You cloaked us in ignorance and left us to fend for ourselves. If you think your union can waltz in now and claim the moral high ground, you've got another thing coming." Aris leaned forward, his crystalline eyes locking onto the officers. "From ourselves." The room fell silent. Caro, sensing a deeper truth, pressed further. "What do you mean, Commander?" Aris hesitated. Sharing the Union's secrets with a race they'd long since forgotten was forbidden, yet he knew withholding the truth now could mean war. Humanity was engineered, he began, his voice carefully measured. Thousands of years ago, during a conflict the Galactic Union could not afford to lose. You were designed to be adaptable, resilient, and relentless. Perfect warriors. The murmurs erupted again, this time louder, angrier. Caro slammed her hand onto the table, silencing the room. "Engineered," she repeated. "And when the war ended, you discarded us." "Not discarded," Aris insisted. "Preserved. The Union feared what humanity could become without conflict to direct your energy. Your potential was limitless, but so was your capacity for destruction. Earth was designated as a sanctuary, a place where your kind could thrive in peace." "Sanctuary?" Caro's voice was laced with disbelief. "You left us to die on a planet barely capable of sustaining us at the time. If that's your idea of a sanctuary, I'd hate to see your prisons." Before Aris could respond, a soft chime echoed through the room. One of the officers, seated near a console, frowned as he scanned the data streaming in. "General," he said, his voice tight with urgency, "we've picked up an unregistered vessel entering the system." The room shifted instantly into high alert. "Show me," Caro commanded. A holographic projection filled the air above the table, displaying a sleek, dark vessel unlike any human or Union craft. It moved with precision, skimming the edges of Earth's defensive perimeter as if testing its response. Aris's heart sank. He recognized the design immediately. "Krillin," he whispered. The humans turned to him. "Krillin?" Caro asked, her tone sharp. "What are they?" Aris rose, his face grave. "They are the reason you were created." The weight of his words silenced the room once more. Aris continued, his voice steady but urgent. "The Krillin are an ancient adversary of the Union, a predatory species technologically advanced and ruthlessly efficient. They have no interest in diplomacy, only conquest. And if they are here, it means they've discovered what we tried to keep hidden for centuries." "Earth," Caro said, realization dawning. "Earth," Aris confirmed. "And the weapon it once held." Caro's expression darkened, her mind already racing through possibilities. "Weapons? Are you telling me there's something on this planet they want?" Aris hesitated, then nodded. "Your DNA. The perfect soldier wasn't just a concept, it was realized. Humanity's adaptability and ingenuity were refined to create the ultimate defense. But the Krillin see you as more than a threat. They see you as a resource. If they gain access to your genetic code, they'll create something far worse than you or I could imagine." The holographic display flickered as the Krillin ship edged closer. Caro straightened, her voice calm but commanding. "Scramble the fleet. Lock all defenses on that vessel. Commander Aris, if you have any more secrets to share, now would be the time." Aris stared at the projection, his mind racing. This was not how he had envisioned his mission. Humanity had been meant to stay hidden, forgotten by the galaxy. But now their very existence hung in the balance. "General," he said, his voice firm, "if we're to survive this, you'll need more than just your fleet. You'll need the truth." Caro narrowed her eyes. "Then start talking." Commander Aris stepped closer to the holographic display, his crystalline eyes fixated on the advancing Krillin ship. The room around him was tense, every human officer poised for orders, weapons systems primed. but Eris knew that brute force alone would not be enough to counter what was coming. "The Krillin aren't here by accident," Eris began, his voice cutting through the silence. "They've been searching for Earth ever since the war ended, ever since we tried to erase all records of its location." General Caro's expression darkened, her sharp features illuminated by the glowing map of Earth's orbit. "You said humanity was engineered as a weapon. Now you're telling me that weapon wasn't dismantled?" Eris hesitated. "Not dismantled. Hidden. The Union feared destroying it would create an even greater risk, one we couldn't control. So we buried it." "Buried it where?" demanded the young officer from before, his voice filled with frustration. "On Earth, among us?" "Not among you," Eris corrected, his gaze unwavering. "Within you." The words hit the room like a shockwave. Officers exchanged uneasy glances and Caro stepped closer to Eris, her tone deadly serious. "Explain. Now." "Humanity's adaptability, your resilience, your ability to innovate under pressure, all of it was no accident," Eris admitted. "Your genetic code was designed to evolve, to overcome any threat. In the event of a catastrophic conflict, that code was programmed to activate latent capabilities, strength, speed, intelligence, far beyond what you currently possess, but only under the most extreme conditions." Caro's eyes narrowed. "And what exactly triggers these latent capabilities?" "Desperation," Eris said simply. "A threat so existential that it forces your evolution to accelerate. The Krillin know this. They've likely seen traces of it in old battles, records we failed to fully erase. They're here to either control that power or eliminate it." Caro folded her arms, processing the revelation. "And you thought leaving us here with no knowledge of this was a good idea?" "The decision wasn't mine," Eris replied, his tone somber. "The Union believed ignorance would ensure peace, that if you didn't know what you were, you'd never be tempted to use it." A sharp alarm blared through the room, interrupting their exchange. The Krillin ship had stopped just outside Earth's defensive perimeter. Its sleek black hull shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and its energy readings spiked ominously. "They're charging weapons," shouted the officer at the console. Caro turned sharply to her team. "Deploy the orbital fleet, keep them contained." "Yes, General," the officer responded, his fingers flying across the console. Eris stepped forward, his tone urgent. "Your fleet won't be enough. The Krillin are technologically superior, and their weaponry is designed to disable, not destroy. They want you alive." Caro shot him a sharp look. "Alive for what?" "To harvest," Eris said gravely. "They want your DNA, the same traits we engineered into your species. If they get their hands on it, they'll create an army of their own, one that could decimate not just Earth, but the entire Union." Caro's jaw tightened. "Not on my watch. If they want to fight, we'll give them one." The holographic display shifted, showing Earth's orbital defenses coming online. Satellites armed with plasma disruptors powered up, and squadrons of human ships moved into formation. The Krillin vessel, undeterred, released a swarm of smaller drones, each one bristling with weaponry. As the first shots were fired, the room erupted into controlled chaos. Officers shouted commands, data streams lit up the consoles, and the tension was palpable. Eris, watching the battle unfold, turned to Caro. "You have the advantage of numbers, but that won't last. If they breach your defenses, they'll target your cities next." "Then what do you suggest?" Caro snapped, her voice laced with frustration. Eris hesitated, then made his decision. "Activate the latent code." The room went silent. Even amidst the chaos of the unfolding battle, his words seemed to echo. Caro stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You're suggesting we unlock something we've never used, something we don't even understand." "It's your only chance," Eris said firmly. "The Krillin won't stop. You need to meet them with everything humanity has to offer." "And what happens to us if we do?" Caro asked, her voice quieter now, tinged with the weight of responsibility. "What happens to humanity?" "You evolve," Eris said simply. "And in doing so, you might just save yourselves and the galaxy." Caro turned back to the display, watching as the Krillin ship closed the distance, its drones overwhelming Earth's first line of defense. Her officers waited, their eyes on her, their faith unwavering. "Do it," she said finally, her voice steady. "Whatever it takes." Eris nodded and moved to a nearby console, his hands deftly entering commands. As the system came to life, a low hum filled the room, a resonance that seemed to reach deep into the very fabric of their beings. Humanity's hidden potential was about to awaken. The hum in the room deepened, resonating through every corner of the command center. Commander Eris stood at the console, his crystalline fingers dancing across the alien interface. Behind him, General Caro and her team watched in tense silence, their gazes flicking between the holographic battle above Earth and the enigmatic figure activating humanity's dormant code. "This isn't just a switch to flip," Eris muttered, his voice strained. "The genetic fail-safes were built with layers of encryption. They were designed to be nearly impossible to unlock without specific conditions. And yet here you are," Caro said, her voice sharp. "Unlocking it anyway." Eris glanced at her briefly. "The Krillin won't wait for us to debate. Either we unlock it or we lose everything." The console emitted a soft chime, and a stream of complex symbols scrolled across the screen. Eris's eyes narrowed as he deciphered the ancient code. "This will take a moment. The activation sequence needs to synchronize with your species' bioelectric field." General Caro didn't have time to process his words. The holographic display shifted again, showing the Krillin drones breaking through Earth's orbital defenses. Human ships fired desperately, their plasma cannons lighting up the void, but the Krillin vessels moved with an eerie precision, dodging and weaving through the barrage. "They're targeting our satellites," an officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "If they take those out, we'll be blind," Caro finished grimly. "Redirect all remaining ships to protect the primary array." "Yes, General." Eris's voice cut through the tension. "I need you to prepare your people." Caro turned sharply. "Prepare them for what?" "For what comes next," Eris replied, his tone heavy. "The activation won't be subtle. It will resonate through every human on Earth. They'll feel it, and if they're not ready, it could overwhelm them." Caro's lips pressed into a thin line. "What exactly are we talking about here?" "A surge of energy," Eris explained. "Adrenaline, cognitive acceleration, physical enhancements, all of it will come at once. For some, it may feel like a rush of power. For others, it may feel like chaos." The general's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "I'll issue the warning." She turned to her communications officer. "Patch me through to the Global Emergency Network. I need to address the planet." The officer hesitated, his fingers hovering over the controls. "What should I tell them, General?" Caro's eyes flicked to Eris, then back to her officer. "Tell them to brace themselves, tell them to trust their instincts, and above all, tell them to fight." The officer nodded and began transmitting the message. Around the world, screens and speakers came alive with Caro's voice, her words steady and commanding. "This is General Caro, speaking to every human being on Earth. In the next few moments, you may feel different, stronger, faster, sharper. This is not an accident. This is humanity's answer to the threat we now face. Whatever you feel, trust it. Lean into it, and know that you are not alone. The future of our species depends on what we do next." As her words echoed across the globe, the activation sequence reached its climax. The console in front of Eris emitted a brilliant burst of light, and a deep, resonant tone filled the room. The sound wasn't just heard, it was felt, vibrating through the very marrow of their bones. On Earth, billions of people froze as the resonance washed over them. In cities, rural villages, and remote outposts, humanity collectively held its breath. And then it began. A construction worker on a scaffold felt his grip tighten unnaturally, the strength in his hands doubling. A scientist in her lab found her mind racing with clarity, solving equations she'd struggled with for years. A group of firefighters trapped in a burning building suddenly moved with precision and speed, breaking free against all odds. Across the planet, humanity's potential began to awaken. In the command center, Caro watched the holographic display as Earth's defenses rallied. Pilots who had been struggling moments before now moved with uncanny precision, their reactions impossibly fast. Ground forces mobilized with an intensity that was almost frightening, their coordination flawless. "Status update," Caro barked. The communications officer's voice was filled with awe. "General, the fleet is holding. The drones are being pushed back." Eris stepped back from the console, his expression unreadable. "It's starting." Caro turned to him. "What's starting?" Eris met her gaze. "The evolution of your species." Before she could respond, the command center shook violently. A distant explosion reverberated through the station and alarms blared. The Krillin ship had fired a massive disruptor beam, disabling one of Earth's orbital platforms. "They're escalating," Eris said grimly. "They're testing you." Caro clenched her fists, her voice firm. "Then let's show them what happens when humanity fights back." The explosions outside reverberated through the command center, shaking loose fragments of debris from the ceiling. On the holographic display, Earth's orbital defenses flickered, one station entirely dark, another barely holding on. Yet for every human defeat, there was a surge of resilience as humanity's forces began to fight back with a level of ferocity that caught even the Krillin off guard. Commander Eris paced back to the central console, his movements sharper, more urgent. "The activation is complete, but the Krillin will adapt. They're not just testing your strength, they're testing your unity. If they sense a fracture, they'll exploit it." General Caro barely looked at him, her gaze locked on the display. "They won't find one." Across the planet, the effects of the activation rippled like an unstoppable tide. Emergency services coordinated with military precision. Civilians, now hyper-aware and seemingly infused with courage, began organizing themselves into support networks, sheltering the vulnerable, transporting supplies, and even joining the fight where needed. In the heart of New York City, a firefighter led his crew into a collapsing building, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to rescue trapped civilians with moments to spare. In a remote desert outpost, a mechanic whose hands moved faster than thought repaired a downed communications tower, reconnecting an entire network. Even in space, the human pilots felt the change. Lieutenant Ramos, one of Earth's ace fighter pilots, now dodged Krillin disruptor beams with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. "I don't know what's happening, but I feel unstoppable," he muttered into his calm. "Focus, Ramos," came his commander's reply. "We need that energy to hold the line." And hold it, they did. The human fleet began to swarm with unprecedented efficiency. Squadrons that had been struggling to stay organized now moved as one, their strikes coordinated as if choreographed. Ships disabled moments earlier sprang back to life as their crews worked with newfound speed and ingenuity. Back in the command center, Eris scanned the readings with growing amazement. This is extraordinary. The code isn't just unlocking latent potential, it's fostering unity. They're acting as a single organism. "That's what you don't understand about us," Caro said, her voice low but fierce. "We don't break under pressure. We rise." Her words proved prophetic. On the holographic display, a particularly large Krillin dreadnought broke formation, maneuvering toward the weakened orbital station. Its disruptor beams charged, ready to deliver a killing blow. But before it could fire, 3 human ships converged on it, their movements so precise it seemed impossible they weren't in direct communication. In perfect unison, they unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes, piercing the dreadnought's shields and triggering a chain reaction. The Krillin vessel erupted in a spectacular explosion, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Cheers erupted in the command center. Officers clapped one another on the back, their morale bolstered by the sight. Caro didn't cheer, but her expression hardened with determination. "One down. Let's make it the first of many." But Eris wasn't smiling. He studied the console, his sharp features tight with concern. "This is only the beginning." "What are you talking about?" Caro demanded. "We're winning." "For now," Eris admitted. "But the Krillin don't operate alone. Their hive network will register this unexpected resistance, and reinforcements will come. If they've underestimated you before, they won't make that mistake again." Caro stepped closer, her tone icy. "Then tell me, Commander, What's your solution? Eris hesitated, his gaze fixed on the console. There's a failsafe in the code, a final layer of activation designed to push your species to its absolute limit. But what? Caro pressed. But it comes with risks, Eris admitted. The final activation isn't just about enhancing your capabilities. It will change you. Permanently. A tense silence filled the room, broken only by the distant rumble of another explosion. Caro's officers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Eris's words sinking in. Finally, Caro spoke, her voice steady but resolute. We didn't come this far to falter now. If that's what it takes to ensure our survival, then so be it. Eris met her gaze, his crystalline eyes searching hers for any hint of hesitation. He found none. Very well. But you need to prepare your people. This will be unlike anything they've experienced. Caro turned to her communications officer. Issue a global alert. Tell them the stakes and tell them to hold the line, no matter what. As the officer moved to comply, Eris began inputting the final sequence. The room dimmed as the console emitted a low, resonant hum. Across Earth, billions of humans felt it, a deep vibration that seemed to pulse through their very beings. The Krillin fleet, sensing a shift, began to regroup, their formations tightening. The battle above Earth grew fiercer, more desperate, but humanity, now united in purpose and empowered beyond measure, stood ready. Caro gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white. Whatever happens next, Commander, just remember, we don't give up. The hum grew louder, reaching a crescendo that seemed to shake the stars themselves. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the failsafe activated. Commander Lysara stood silently in the command chamber of the Edrian Prime Citadel, the holographic display casting an eerie glow across her sharp features. The gathered council of human leaders and strategists looked to her for answers, their expressions a mixture of fear and anticipation. On the display, a rotating schematic of a strange artifact pulsed faintly, an object uncovered deep beneath the planet's surface. Its design was unmistakably human, yet its purpose was obscured in layers of advanced engineering far beyond current understanding. This artifact predates the collapse, Lysara began, her voice steady despite the weight of her revelation. It was built during the zenith era of our ancestors, a time when humanity reached technological heights we can only dream of today. But what you see here isn't just a relic. It's a weapon. The room fell silent. General Karthos, the grizzled veteran of countless space campaigns, leaned forward. A weapon? Against what? The Zyrinth? No, Lysara replied, shaking her head. Against something even worse. The inscriptions on the artifact speak of an event they called the Shattering, a war not of nations but of realities. This weapon was humanity's last line of defense, designed to tear through dimensions and strike at beings that exist beyond physical space. A murmur rippled through the council. Dr. Vera, an expert in ancient human tech, stepped forward. Commander, if this is true, then humanity wasn't just advanced in the past. We were fighting something incomprehensible. And if this weapon exists, if it can still be activated, then why was it buried? Lysara gestured to the hologram. The text suggests it was sealed intentionally, hidden to prevent it from ever being misused. But our current scans show that it's waking up. Something is reactivating its core systems, and we don't know what or who is behind it. The council exchanged uneasy glances. General Karthos broke the silence. If the Zyrinth forces discover this weapon, they'll stop at nothing to take it. They won't care about its original purpose. They'll use it to dominate every known system. That's why we need to act now, Lysara said firmly. We have two priorities: protect the artifact at all costs and uncover who or what is activating it. If we're too late, the Zyrinth won't just destroy us, they'll destroy themselves and everyone else in this galaxy. As tension thickened in the room, the hologram flickered, replaced by a live feed from the excavation site. Soldiers stood in formation around the artifact, their weapons trained on the entrance to the cavern. A static-filled transmission cut through the room. Commander Lysara, a voice crackled. We have a situation. There's been a breach at the site. The council froze. Lysara's eyes narrowed. What kind of breach? Before the transmission could answer, the feed cut to static. A moment later, alarms blared throughout the Citadel, and a young officer burst into the chamber, his face pale with fear. "Commander, Xyrenth infiltrators have broken through our outer defenses. They're heading straight for the artifact." Lysara clenched her fists, her mind racing. The Xyrenth weren't just probing their defenses, they knew exactly what they were looking for. Turning to the Council, she barked her orders with precision. "General Karthos, mobilize all available units. Dr. Vera, I need your team to secure the artifact and prepare for immediate transport." This is no longer a diplomatic issue. It's a full-scale war. As the Council dispersed into a flurry of action, Lysara remained still for a moment, staring at the flickering hologram of the ancient weapon. Her thoughts darkened as a chilling realization dawned on her. The weapon wasn't just waking up, it was calling out, and something, somewhere, was answering. The excavation site was a chaos of blinding lights, shouting soldiers, and the hum of vehicles preparing for evacuation. The artifact loomed in the center, a massive construct of blackened metal and crystalline components, glowing faintly with pulses of blue light. Its surface seemed to ripple as though alive, reflecting the frantic activity around it. Soldiers barked orders, engineers scrambled to stabilize its containment field, and scientists tried to decipher the cryptic inscriptions that lined its surface. Commander Lysara arrived in a blur of motion, her command shuttle touching down just outside the cavern. As she stepped out, the weight of the situation pressed against her chest. This wasn't just an ancient weapon, it was a doorway to something far beyond human comprehension. "Status report," she shouted, her voice cutting through the din. Colonel Riven, her field commander, sprinted toward her, his face set in grim determination. "We've confirmed Xyrenth infiltrators have breached the perimeter, Commander. They've taken out 3 squads and are advancing fast. They're targeting the artifact directly." Lysara's gaze shifted to the artifact, its glow now pulsing faster, almost as if it was responding to the incoming threat. "How much time do we have before they reach the core site?" "Minutes at best," Riven replied. "We've set up choke points, but their tech is more advanced than we anticipated. We're holding them off, but barely." Lysara turned to Dr. Vera, who was hunched over a console nearby, frantically inputting commands. "Doctor, is there any way to shut the artifact down?" "It's attracting them like a beacon." Vera shook her head, her eyes darting between Lysara and the flickering readouts. "Commander, it's not that simple. The artifact's systems are beyond anything we've seen. It's evolving, adapting to its environment. If we attempt to deactivate it, we risk triggering an unknown defense mechanism." "Then we have no choice," Lysara said, her voice steely. "We hold the line." Suddenly, a tremor rippled through the ground, knocking several soldiers off their feet. The artifact's glow intensified, bathing the cavern in an otherworldly light. A low, resonant hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "Commander!" one of the engineers shouted. "The artifact, it's generating an energy field. We're detecting gravitational distortions." Before he could finish, a deafening roar echoed through the cavern as the first wave of Xyrenth infiltrators burst into view. They moved with lethal precision, their sleek insectoid exoskeletons glinting in the artifact's eerie glow. Weapons in hand, they opened fire, cutting through the outer defenses like a scythe through grass. "Engage!" Lysara bellowed, drawing her sidearm. The soldiers around her opened fire, their rounds ricocheting off the Xyrenth's advanced shields. The cavern erupted into a battlefield, the clash of human ingenuity against alien technology. As the firefight raged, Lysara fought her way toward the artifact, her focus unyielding. She knew this was more than a battle. It was a race against time. If the Xyrenth gained control of the artifact, it would mean not just the fall of humanity, but the unraveling of everything the Federation had worked to protect. Behind her, Dr. Vera called out, "Commander!" "The artifact's energy levels are spiking. If this continues, it might..." The words were drowned out by a thunderous explosion as a Xyrenth disruptor round struck a critical support beam, sending a section of the cavern ceiling crashing down. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring the battlefield in a thick haze. Lysera coughed, waving a hand to clear her vision. Through the chaos, she saw the artifact glowing brighter than ever, its hum now a deafening roar. And then, as if answering a call only it could hear, the artifact began to shift. Panels unfolded, revealing intricate mechanisms that spun and clicked with a precision both mechanical and organic. A chilling realization gripped Lysera. The artifact wasn't just waking up, it was preparing to activate. "Fall back to defensive positions," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Do not let them reach the artifact." But even as her forces regrouped, the Xyranth pressed their advantage, their movements relentless and coordinated. And amidst the chaos, a shadow flickered across the artifact's surface, something not of this world, a presence that sent a shiver down Lysera's spine. The weapon wasn't just a tool of war. It was a key, and whatever door it was about to unlock could change the fate of the galaxy forever. The battlefield was a maelstrom of chaos, with flashes of gunfire and energy blasts illuminating the cavern in bursts of light and shadow. The Xyranth forces advanced with unrelenting ferocity, their sleek forms darting through the haze with unnerving speed. Commander Lysera ducked behind a makeshift barricade, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Around her, soldiers scrambled to hold their positions, but it was clear the line was buckling. "Status!" She barked into her comm device, her voice cutting through the din. Colonel Riven's voice crackled through the static. "Not good, Commander. They're overwhelming the perimeter. We've already lost 3 fallback points. If we don't get reinforcements..." "We don't have time for reinforcements," Lysera snapped. Her gaze darted to the artifact, its pulsating glow now almost blinding. The hum had shifted to a low, rhythmic vibration that seemed to resonate through the cavern walls. Whatever was happening, it was escalating and fast. Dr. Vera stumbled toward her, clutching a damaged datapad. Her face was streaked with dust, her eyes wide with panic. "Commander, the artifact's energy field is destabilizing the cavern structure. If we don't contain it, this entire place could collapse." Lysera's mind raced. Between the relentless Xyranth assault and the artifact threatening to tear the cavern apart, their options were dwindling by the second. "Can we move it? Get it out of here?" Vera shook her head vehemently. "The artifact is anchoring itself to this location. It's drawing power from something deep beneath the surface. If we try to move it..." A deafening roar interrupted her, and Lysera turned just in time to see a massive Xyranth soldier crash through the barricade, its claw-like appendages slicing through the steel as though it were paper. The creature let out a guttural hiss and charged, its energy weapons glowing menacingly. Lysera's reflexes kicked in. She raised her sidearm and fired a precise burst at the creature's exposed joints. The rounds found their mark, and the Xyranth stumbled, letting out a pained shriek. But before she could press the advantage, another soldier lunged at her from the side. A surge of energy blasted the second Xyranth backward, and Lysera turned to see Colonel Riven charging forward, his plasma rifle blazing. "You're not dying on my watch, Commander," he growled, taking position beside her. "Good timing," Lysera muttered, reloading her weapon. "We're going to need every last hand to hold this line." The two stood shoulder to shoulder, fending off the encroaching Xyranth forces. But even as they fought, Lysera couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle wasn't with the enemy soldiers. It was with the artifact itself. The hum grew louder and the ground beneath their feet began to quake. Cracks spiderwebbed across the cavern floor, and a strange, unearthly light seeped up from the fissures. The artifact's glow intensified, and for a brief moment it felt as though the entire cavern was suspended in time. Then a voice, deep, resonant, and alien, echoed through the space. It wasn't a sound so much as a feeling, a presence pressing against their minds. The soldiers around Lysera faltered, their weapons lowering as the voice seemed to invade their thoughts. "The threshold has been reached. The key has been found. Prepare." Lysera's vision swam, and she stumbled, clutching her head. The words weren't in any language she recognized, yet their meaning was crystal clear. The artifact was speaking, or perhaps the entity within it. "Commander!" Riven's voice snapped her back to reality. He grabbed her shoulder, his face pale but resolute. "What's happening?" Lysera forced herself to focus, the weight of the voice still pressing on her mind. "The artifact, it's activating. We have to shut it down. Now." Vera, who had taken cover nearby, shouted over the commotion. "We can't. Its power levels are off the charts. If we interfere now, we could trigger a catastrophic release of energy." "And if we don't?" Lysara shot back, her voice sharp. Vera hesitated, then said, "Then we have no idea what it will unleash." As if in answer, a surge of energy erupted from the artifact, sending shockwaves through the cavern. The Zyranth soldiers faltered, their advance momentarily halted as the energy field expanded, crackling with raw power. The light from the artifact grew brighter, casting eerie, shifting shadows across the battlefield. Lysara's heart pounded as she made a split-second decision. "Riven, pull back the troops, get everyone to a safe distance." "What about you?" he demanded, his expression one of alarm. She met his gaze, her resolve unshaken. "I'm going to figure out how to stop this thing." Before he could protest, she turned and sprinted toward the artifact, her mind racing with the weight of the impossible task ahead. The artifact pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, sending waves of energy rippling through the cavern. Lysara fought to steady herself as the vibrations rattled the ground beneath her boots. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, but she forced herself closer to the enigmatic relic. The air around it shimmered, distorting reality like a heat wave. Dr. Vera scrambled after her, still clutching her damaged datapad. "Commander, you can't get any closer. The energy field is destabilizing. Your body won't hold up under that kind of exposure." Lysara gritted her teeth. "Do you have a better plan, Doctor? Because right now this thing is going to take us all down if I don't do something." Vera hesitated, her gaze flickering to the artifact. "The artifact isn't just destabilizing, it's communicating. The voice we heard, it's trying to reach something or someone. If we can decipher the signal, maybe we can disrupt it before it completes its connection." "Fine," Lysara said, gripping her sidearm. "Tell me what you need." Vera hesitated for only a moment before pointing to the base of the artifact. "There's a crystalline node. There! It's amplifying the energy. If we can interface with it, I might be able to decode the transmission and interrupt the sequence." Lysara crouched low, shielding herself from the storm of energy surrounding the artifact. She could barely make out the crystalline node embedded in the artifact's surface, a small glowing shard, pulsing in sync with the artifact's rhythmic hum. "You'd better work fast," she said, motioning for Vera to follow. "We don't have much time." The two advanced cautiously, the artifact's energy rippling around them. Each step felt heavier, the air thicker, as if the artifact itself was resisting their approach. Behind them, Riven barked orders into his comms, coordinating the retreat of the remaining troops. The Zyranth soldiers, disoriented by the artifact's sudden surge of power, had fallen back as well, their guttural hisses echoing faintly in the cavern. As they reached the artifact, Vera knelt beside the crystalline node, her fingers flying over the datapad's cracked surface. Sparks flew as she connected a patch cable to the node, her face illuminated by the artifact's eerie glow. "I'm in," she muttered, her eyes darting across the datapad's interface. "The signal. It's ancient, far older than anything we've encountered before. This artifact, it's not just a weapon or a beacon. It's a key." "A key to what?" Lysara demanded, her grip tightening on her weapon. Before Vera could answer, the artifact flared, the energy field surging outward. Both women were thrown backward, their bodies skidding across the rocky ground. Lysara groaned as she pushed herself up, her vision swimming. The artifact's glow had intensified, and the voice, the alien resonant voice, was louder now, echoing in her mind. "The gateway is opening. The cycle begins anew." Lysara's blood ran cold as the meaning of the words sank in. "Vera, what's happening?" Vera struggled to her feet, clutching her datapad. "The artifact isn't just a key, it's a gateway. It's opening a connection to something. Another dimension, another realm, I don't know. But whatever it's reaching for, it's coming here." A deafening crack split the air, and the cavern walls trembled violently. The artifact's energy coalesced into a blinding beam, shooting upward and carving a jagged hole through the rock ceiling. Above them, the night sky was revealed, swirling with unnatural storm clouds that seemed to pulse in time with the artifact's energy. And then they saw it, a shape emerging through the beam. It was massive, its form indistinct but undeniably alive. Tendrils of energy writhed around it, and its presence radiated a primal, otherworldly power. Lysara's heart pounded as she raised her comm device. "Riven, report. What's happening topside?" Riven's voice crackled through the static, filled with urgency. "Commander, we've got a visual on the surface. Something's coming through the beam. A ship, maybe, or a life form. It's huge." "Hold your position," Lysara ordered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. She turned to Vera. "Can you shut it down?" Vera shook her head, her eyes wide with terror. "It's too late. The gateway is fully open. Whatever's coming through, there's no stopping it now." Lysara clenched her fists, her mind racing. "Then we contain it. If this thing gets loose, it's over. Not just for us, but for the entire sector." She turned back to the artifact, the alien voice still echoing in her mind. The artifact's power was overwhelming, but Lysara knew one thing. If humanity had any chance of survival, they would have to face the unknown and fight it. Part 11. Confronting the unseen. The beam stretched impossibly high, piercing through the swirling storm clouds above. Around it, the air crackled with an unnatural electricity, and the emerging figure loomed larger with each passing second. Its shape defied comprehension, fluid yet solid, glowing yet cloaked in shadows. Tendrils of pure energy extended from its form, lashing out as if testing its new environment. Lysara steadied herself, gripping her sidearm tighter. The sheer presence of the entity sent waves of dread rippling through her. She forced her voice into the comms. "Riven, focus all firepower on the gateway. Whatever is coming through, we can't let it stabilize." Riven's voice barked back, tense but resolute. "Understood, Commander, bringing heavy artillery into position. But this thing is like nothing we've faced before. I don't know if it'll make a dent." Vera, her eyes glued to her datapad, interjected. "Firing on it might only feed its energy. This entity, it doesn't exist entirely in our dimension. It's pulling power from the gateway. If you destroy the artifact now, it could sever the connection. But the backlash, it could wipe out everything in a 50-kilometer radius." "Then we don't have a choice," Lysara growled. "Better we contain it here than let it loose across the system." Her voice softened as she glanced at Vera. "But if you've got another idea, now's the time to speak up." Vera hesitated, her fingers trembling over the datapad. "There's one possibility. The artifact isn't just a gateway. It's a control mechanism. It's binding this entity to our reality. If we can reverse the signal, we might be able to push it back before it fully manifests." Lysara nodded. "Do it. I'll buy you the time you need." She turned her attention to the creature, its tendrils now spreading across the cavern, leaving trails of glowing residue on the rock walls. The air grew colder, and a low, resonant hum filled the space, vibrating in Lysara's chest. The alien voice reverberated louder now, not just in her ears, but in her mind. "The awakening is inevitable. You cannot resist the cycle." The voice was invasive, probing, as if searching for something within her. Lysara shook her head violently, forcing the sensation away. "Yeah, well, cycles are made to be broken," she muttered, leveling her weapon. The first shot cracked through the cavern, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. The energy around the creature rippled, momentarily disrupted, but it quickly reformed. Lysara gritted her teeth and fired again, this time aiming for one of the tendrils. The plasma blast connected, severing the glowing appendage, but the creature didn't recoil. Instead, the severed tendril dissolved into motes of light that drifted back toward the beam. "It's regenerating," she called out. "Vera, how much longer?" "Almost there," Vera shouted, frantically inputting commands. "The signal is ancient, layered. I'm unraveling it, but it's like trying to unscramble a language we've never seen before." Lysara didn't have time to respond. The creature shifted its attention toward her, its form growing more defined. Eyes, or something like them, opened along its surface, glowing with an intense otherworldly light. It moved faster now, one massive tendril snapping toward her. She barely dodged, throwing herself to the side as the tendril slammed into the ground where she had stood. The impact sent shockwaves through the cavern, knocking loose chunks of rock from the ceiling. Lysera rolled to her feet, her sidearm useless against the sheer magnitude of the entity. "Riven!" she yelled into her comms. "Concentrate fire on the beam. We need to weaken its anchor point." "Copy that!" Riven's voice came back, followed by the thunderous sound of artillery fire from above. Explosions rocked the cavern as missiles struck the artifact, shaking its foundations. The beam flickered, its intensity waning slightly, but the creature roared, a soundless psychic bellow that sent pain lancing through Lysera's skull. Vera screamed, clutching her head as the datapad fell from her hands. "It's fighting back! It knows what we're trying to do!" Lysera crawled toward Vera, grabbing the datapad. "Then we don't stop! Tell me what to do!" Vera, her face pale and sweat-soaked, pointed weakly at the crystalline node. You have to sever its connection to the artifact manually. Use the override on the pad. It'll overload the node and disrupt the signal." Lysera nodded, her jaw set. "Consider it done." She sprinted toward the artifact, dodging debris and the thrashing tendrils of the entity. The crystalline node glowed brighter as she approached, pulsating in rhythm with the artifact. The alien voice grew deafening, pounding in her mind. "Futile, you cannot destroy what has already begun." "We'll see about that," Lysera snarled, slamming the datapad into the node's interface. The screen flickered and a warning message appeared. "Energy overload imminent. Detonation in 30 seconds." Lysera's heart raced as the artifact trembled violently. She turned to Vera. "We've got 30 seconds to get out of here. Move." The cavern erupted into chaos as the artifact began to destabilize, cracks spreading along its surface. The alien entity screeched, its form writhing in agony as the beam began to collapse. Lysera grabbed Vera, half carrying her toward the cavern's exit as rocks rained down around them. Behind them, the artifact's glow intensified, a blinding light consuming the cavern. The countdown ticked away, each second an eternity, and then, with a final pulse, the artifact detonated. The blast wave rippled outward, consuming the artifact in a surge of light and sound. Lysera dove behind a jagged rock formation, pulling Vera with her as the shockwave tore through the cavern. The sound was deafening, a deep guttural roar that seemed to reverberate through every molecule of her body. For a moment all was chaos, the world reduced to light, heat, and force, and then silence. Lysera coughed, brushing away the debris that had settled over her. The air was thick with dust, the acrid scent of scorched stone and metal stinging her nostrils. She turned to Vera, who was groaning but alive, her datapad clutched tightly in one trembling hand. "You still with me?" Lysera asked, her voice hoarse. Vera nodded weakly. "Barely. Did it work?" Lysera risked a glance over the rock. Where the artifact had once stood, there was now only a smoldering crater. The beam of energy was gone, and with it, the alien entity. The cavern was eerily quiet, save for the occasional crackle of residual energy dissipating into the air. "I think so," Lysera said, pulling Vera to her feet. "But let's not stick around to find out if it's temporary." They staggered toward the cavern's exit, the weight of the ordeal pressing down on them. As they emerged into the stormy night, Riven's voice crackled over the comms. "Commander, status report. Are you alive down there?" "Alive," Lysera confirmed, taking a deep breath of the cold, rain-soaked air. "The artifact is destroyed. The entity, it's gone. For now." There was a pause before Riven responded, his relief palpable. "Copy that. We're pulling you out. Transport's inbound." Lysera turned to Vera, who was staring back at the cavern entrance, her expression troubled. "What is it?" Vera hesitated, her voice low. "That entity. It wasn't just trying to invade. It was reaching for something on this planet." Lysera frowned. "What do you mean?" "The artifact was the gateway. It's gone now. Vera shook her head. The artifact was just a tool, a means to an end. Whatever that thing wanted, it's still here, and it's not going to stop until it gets it. Before Lysera could respond, the low hum of an approaching transport ship drew their attention. The sleek craft descended through the storm, its landing lights cutting through the darkness. As it touched down, the rear hatch opened and Riven stepped out, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "You two look like hell," he said, his usual smirk tempered by genuine concern. "Let's get you out of here." As they boarded the transport, Lysera's mind raced. The battle was over, but Vera's words lingered. If the entity had been reaching for something, then destroying the artifact was only a temporary victory. Whatever was buried here, whatever the Federation had tried to hide, was still a threat. The transport lifted off, the storm shrinking below them as they ascended into the atmosphere. Riven handed Lysera a datapad, his expression grim. "While you were busy down there, we intercepted a transmission. You need to see this." Lysera tapped the screen, and a grainy video feed appeared. It showed a Federation council chamber, its members in heated debate. Words like containment breach, unauthorized excavation, and Class 5 anomaly were repeated, their urgency undeniable. At the center of the feed was a hologram of the artifact, pulsing with energy. But this wasn't the artifact they had destroyed. It was another one. Somewhere else. Lysera's grip tightened on the datapad. "They knew," she muttered. "They knew this wasn't the only one." Vera leaned over, her face pale. "If there's another artifact, and another gateway." Lysera didn't let her finish. She looked at Riven, her jaw set. "We need to find it, before they do." The transport pierced through the atmosphere, the storm fading into the endless void of space. Lysera stared out the viewport, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. The fight wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The transport docked aboard the Eclipse, the sleek Federation frigate that had served as their temporary base. As Lysera and her team disembarked, a cold urgency settled over her. The intercepted transmission was more than troubling. It was damning. The Federation Council had not only known about the artifact's existence, but it seemed they had withheld crucial information that could have prevented this crisis altogether. Riven and Vera flanked her as they marched toward the briefing room, where the rest of the crew waited. The corridor was bathed in the soft glow of emergency lights, a precaution implemented after their recent encounter with the alien entity. Lysera's boots clicked against the polished floor, each step heavier than the last. Inside the briefing room, the crew fell silent as the trio entered. Captain Arik, the stoic commander of the Eclipse, stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed. "Lysera," he began, his voice steady but laced with tension. "What the hell did you find down there?" Lysera tossed the datapad onto the table, the intercepted video playing for everyone to see. The council chamber filled the screen, the heated debate echoing in the small room. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crew as they listened to the Federation representatives discuss multiple artifacts, containment breaches, and the risks of the anomalies. Arik's jaw tightened. They knew. All this time they knew. Lysera nodded. Not only did they know, but they deliberately kept us in the dark. They sent us here to clean up their mess without giving us the tools or knowledge to do it. Vera stepped forward, her voice firm despite the weariness in her frame. The entity we encountered wasn't unique. There are other artifacts, and if the Council's records are correct, they're scattered across multiple systems. Riven leaned against the wall, his usual smirk replaced by a grim expression. "So what now? We can't just waltz into a Federation Council meeting and demand answers." "No," Lysera said, her tone sharp. "But we can find the next artifact before they do. If we can neutralize it, maybe we can prevent another breach. And maybe," she added, her eyes narrowing, "we can force the Council to tell us the truth." Arik nodded slowly. "It's a long shot, but it's our best chance. We'll need to move quickly. If the Federation finds out we intercepted their transmission..." "They'll come for us," Lysera finished. "I know, but we've faced worse." Arik turned to Vera. "Can you pinpoint the location of the next artifact?" Vera hesitated, glancing at her datapad. The transmission referenced a system in the outer rim. It's remote, sparsely populated, and has a history of unexplained anomalies. If I cross-reference it with Federation survey data. Do it, Arik ordered. And do it fast. As Vera worked, Lysara turned to the rest of the crew. This mission just got a lot more dangerous. If any of you want to back out, I won't hold it against you. But if you stay, know this. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the truth. And for every life the Federation has put at risk by keeping these secrets. The room was silent for a moment, then Riven stepped forward. You know I'm in, he said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Someone's got to keep you from doing something reckless. One by one, the rest of the crew voiced their support, their determination evident despite the fear in their eyes. They had faced the unknown before, and they would face it again. Vera looked up from her datapad, her expression triumphant. Got it. The next artifact is on Talvex 9, a barren world at the edge of the Varion Nebula. If the Federation hasn't already sent a team, we might have a chance to get there first. Arik turned to Lysara. Then let's not waste any time. We'll plot a course and leave within the hour. As the crew dispersed to prepare for the journey, Lysara lingered, staring at the empty hollow screen where the Council's debate had played. The Federation's betrayal cut deeper than she wanted to admit, but it also steeled her resolve. They had underestimated her team. They had underestimated her. Let's see how they like it when we start asking the questions, she muttered, before turning and heading for the bridge. The Eclipse cut through the void like a blade, its engines humming with quiet intensity as it streaked toward the Varion Nebula. On the bridge, Lysara stood at the tactical console, studying the faint outlines of Talvex 9 projected on the holographic display. The barren world orbited a dying star, its surface a wasteland of jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. A perfect hiding place for something the Federation didn't want found. Approaching the nebula, announced Arik from the captain's chair, his voice calm but laced with anticipation. We're about to lose standard sensor capabilities. Everyone stay sharp. The Varion Nebula loomed ahead, a swirling mass of electric blue and violet gases. It pulsed with an almost hypnotic rhythm, and faint arcs of lightning crackled across its surface. As the Eclipse plunged into the cloud, visibility dropped to near zero, the external viewports filled with a shimmering haze. We've entered the interference zone, Vera reported, her fingers flying across her console. Switching to short-range scanners, but even those are spotty in this environment. Lysara leaned over her console, her gaze narrowing as she watched the scanner feeds. Anything on the surface? Not yet, Vera said, frowning. But I'm picking up energy fluctuations ahead. Could be natural phenomena, or it could be them, Riven interrupted, strolling onto the bridge with his usual nonchalance. He carried his rifle slung over his shoulder, but the tension in his posture betrayed his readiness for a fight. You think the Federation would send a team this deep already? It's possible, Lysara replied, her voice sharp. Or worse, there could be scavengers. We're not the only ones who monitor Federation activity. As if on cue, a warning chime echoed across the bridge. Unidentified vessel detected, Vera announced, her voice tight. They're running silent, but I'm picking up faint emissions. It's a small ship, maybe a scout. On screen, Arik ordered. The display flickered, revealing a grainy image of a sleek, black craft cutting through the nebula like a predator. Its surface was coated in a reflective material, making it almost invisible in the shifting haze. The design wasn't Federation, it was something else. Scavengers, Lysara muttered, her jaw tightening. They must have intercepted the same transmissions we did. If they get to the artifact first. They won't, Arik said firmly. Helm, adjust our trajectory. Vera, keep tracking that ship, but don't let them know we're onto them. The Eclipse shifted course, its engines purring softly as it matched the scout ship's trajectory. The two vessels danced through the nebula, their paths converging on Talvex 9. Every second felt heavier than the last as they closed the distance to the planet. Surface scans coming online, Vera announced, her console lighting up. I'm detecting a structure, subterranean, heavily shielded. That's got to be where the artifact is, Lysara nodded. What about the other ship? They're moving in fast, Vera replied. Looks like they're heading for the same coordinates. Then we beat them there, Arik said. Prep the landing team. Lysara, you're in command. Rive and Vera, gear up, we're going in hot. The crew scrambled into action, their movements precise despite the rising tension. Lysara and her team suited up in the armory, checking their weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. Riven broke the silence as he holstered his sidearm. What do you think we're walking into down there? Another anomaly like the last one? Could be, Lysara said, strapping a blade to her thigh. Or it could be worse. The Federation wouldn't bury something this deep unless they were afraid of it. Comforting, Riven muttered. Remind me why I keep following you into places like this? Because you know I'll keep you alive. Lysara shot back, her tone sharp but playful. Now focus. We've got a job to do. The landing craft detached from the eclipse, plunging toward Talvex 9's surface like a meteor. Inside the cramped cabin, the team braced themselves as turbulence rocked the ship. Touchdown in 60 seconds, Vera announced over the comms, her voice steady. I'm picking up faint energy readings near the structure. We'll have to move fast. Lysara tightened her grip on the restraints, her mind racing. Whatever waited for them on the surface, she knew one thing for certain. They weren't alone. The craft shuddered as it broke through the planet's atmosphere, the roar of the engines replaced by an eerie silence as they descended into the dust-choked wasteland. The ground rushed up to meet them, a jagged expanse of black rock and swirling ash. As the landing gear engaged, Lysara unsnapped her harness and stood, her voice cutting through the tense air. Stay sharp, eyes open. Let's find that artifact before anyone else does. The landing craft's ramp hissed open, spilling the crew into the harsh, swirling dust of Talvex 9. The air was thick with static electricity. The ground beneath their boots cracked and dry, riddled with veins of iridescent minerals. The dim light of the dying star cast long, distorted shadows across the jagged terrain. Lysara took point, her rifle raised and her helmet visor displaying tactical readouts of the environment. Riven followed closely behind, his own weapon drawn, while Vera adjusted a handheld scanner, its interface flickering with interference from the planet's unstable magnetic field. The structure is roughly 2 clicks northeast, Vera announced, shouting to be heard over the howling wind. But this interference is worse than expected. It's messing with our comms and scanners. Stay tight and watch for movement, Lysara ordered. If the scavengers beat us here, they won't be rolling out the welcome mat. The team moved as one, navigating the uneven ground with practiced efficiency. Every step sent a faint crunch echoing through the desolate landscape, the sound swallowed almost immediately by the unrelenting winds. Above them, the nebula's faint glow bled through the dust-choked sky, giving the world an otherworldly hue. As they crested a ridge, the structure came into view, a massive, weathered dome of blackened metal, half buried in the rocky terrain. Its surface was etched with unfamiliar symbols that pulsed faintly with a blue-green light. A sense of unease rippled through the team as they stared at it. What the hell is that? Riven muttered, his voice tight. It doesn't look Federation. It's not, Lysara said grimly, her gaze locked on the glowing symbols. This is something else. The scanner in Vera's hands beeped rapidly, and her eyes widened as she read the data. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's inside, it's powerful. Let's hope we're the first ones to it, Riven said, glancing over his shoulder. But I've got a bad feeling we're not. As if on cue, a sharp crack echoed through the air, followed by the unmistakable hiss of plasma fire. A bolt of blue energy sizzled past them, striking the rock near Lysara's feet and sending shards flying. Cover, she shouted, diving behind a boulder as more plasma fire erupted from the ridge to their left. Riven returned fire, his shots precise and controlled, forcing the attackers to retreat momentarily. Looks like our scavenger friends decided to say hello. Vera ducked behind cover, her fingers flying across her scanner. 4 signatures moving fast, they're flanking us. Lysara's mind raced as she assessed the situation. The scavengers were better equipped than she'd anticipated. their weapons and tactics suggesting more than just opportunists. They were professionals. "Vera, can you jam their comms?" she asked, firing a burst of suppressive shots. "Working on it," Vera replied, her focus intense. "Give me 30 seconds. Lysera signaled to Riven. "Hold them off. I'll circle around and take them from behind." "Be careful," Raven warned, his voice low. "These guys aren't amateurs." Lysera nodded, her expression steely as she slipped into the shadows, moving swiftly and silently around the enemy's position. The scavengers were focused on Riven's covering fire, giving her the opportunity to flank them unnoticed. As she closed the distance, she could hear their voices over the wind, alien and guttural, their words sharp and commanding. They wore mismatched armor, their faces obscured by helmets that glowed faintly with integrated HUDs. Lysara could see their weapons, advanced plasma rifles far beyond what most scavengers could afford. Why would mercenaries be after this artifact? She wondered, her grip tightening on her rifle. And who hired them? With precision honed by years of training, Lysera took aim at the nearest scavenger and fired. The plasma round struck true and the figure crumpled to the ground. Before the others could react, she was on them, her movements a blur of efficiency. In moments, the remaining scavengers were neutralized, their weapons scattered across the ground. Riven and Vera emerged from their cover, their weapons still raised as they approached. "Nice work," Riven said, giving Lysara an approving nod. "But this gear, it doesn't add up." "No, it doesn't," Lysara agreed, crouching to inspect one of the fallen scavengers. She pried a small device from the figure's wrist, her eyes narrowing as she examined it. The Federation emblem was faint, but unmistakable. "This just got a lot more complicated," she muttered, holding the device up for the others to see. "These aren't just scavengers. They're working for someone inside the Federation." Vera's face darkened. "If that's true, then we're not just fighting for the artifact. We're fighting to keep it out of the wrong hands." Lysara stood, her resolve hardening. "Then we move now. Whatever's in that structure, we can't let them have it." The team pressed on, their pace quickening as they approached the entrance to the dome. The air seemed to thrum with energy, the glowing symbols on the structure's surface pulsing faster as they drew near. As they reached the entrance, a deep, resonant hum filled the air, and the massive metal doors began to slide open. Lysera tightened her grip on her rifle, her voice low but firm. "Eyes open, everyone. Whatever's inside, we're not leaving without it." The massive doors of the dome groaned open, revealing a dark, yawning entrance that seemed to stretch endlessly into the structure's depths. A faint blue-green light pulsed from within, casting eerie shadows on the rocky terrain outside. The hum of energy grew louder, resonating through the air and vibrating underfoot. Lysera motioned for the team to stay close as they cautiously entered, their weapons raised and their eyes scanning every corner of the cavernous space. The air inside was thick and heavy, charged with an unnatural static that made their hair stand on end. The walls were smooth and seamless, composed of a material unlike anything they'd encountered before. The glowing symbols etched into the surface seemed to shift and writhe as they passed, almost as if they were alive. The sound of their footsteps echoed eerily, swallowed by the vastness of the chamber. "This place feels wrong," Riven muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like it's watching us." Vera's scanner beeped erratically, the readings chaotic and difficult to interpret. "I'm picking up massive energy spikes ahead," she said, her voice tight. "Whatever's powering this place is beyond anything we've seen." The team pressed forward, the corridor narrowing into a steep descent that spiraled downward. The light grew dimmer, the shadows darker, and the hum of energy louder, almost deafening. As they reached the bottom, the corridor opened into a vast circular chamber. In the center of the room stood a monolithic device, towering, alien, and ancient. Its surface was covered in the same glowing symbols, but these radiated a more intense light pulsating in rhythm with the hum. Strange conduits spiraled out from its base, embedding themselves into the walls and floor like veins feeding a living organism. Vera stepped forward cautiously, her scanner going haywire as she pointed it toward the monolith. This "This is a power source," she stammered, her voice filled with awe. "It's generating energy on a scale we can't even measure. This could power entire planets or destroy them." Lysara's eyes narrowed as she studied the monolith. "We need to secure this before anyone else gets to it. Vera, can you interface with it?" Vera hesitated, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted her scanner. "I can try, but this tech it's not just alien, it's something else entirely. It's like it's alive." "Do it," Lysara said firmly, her gaze sweeping the chamber for any signs of movement. "Riven, cover her. I'll keep watch at the entrance." As Vera began her work, the monolith seemed to respond, its symbols glowing brighter and its hum intensifying. Riven kept his weapon trained on the shadows, his finger hovering over the trigger. "This thing's defenses are minimal," Vera said, her voice shaky. "It's like it's letting me in, but that doesn't make sense. Why would—" Before she could finish, the chamber shook violently, and a deafening roar echoed from the corridor they had just descended. The team froze, their breaths catching in their throats. "What the hell was that?" Riven demanded, his weapon snapping toward the sound. Lysara's jaw tightened. "Not good. We've got company." "Vera, how much longer?" "Just a little more," Vera replied, her hands flying over her scanner as she worked to extract data from the monolith. The roar came again, closer this time, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The corridor behind them lit up with an ominous red glow, and the sound of heavy metallic footsteps echoed toward them. "Move faster!" Lysara barked, her weapon aimed at the corridor. "Whatever's coming, it's not friendly." Suddenly, a massive figure emerged from the shadows, a towering mechanical construct, its body a grotesque fusion of metal and organic matter. Its eyes glowed a fiery red, and its limbs bristled with weaponry. The air around it crackled with energy, and its presence exuded a palpable menace. "It's a sentinel!" Vera shouted, panic in her voice. "A guardian of the monolith!" The construct's gaze locked onto the team, and it let out a low, rumbling growl before charging forward, its steps shaking the chamber. Lysara fired a volley of plasma rounds, but they dissipated harmlessly against an energy field surrounding the sentinel. "Fall back," Lysara ordered, motioning for the team to retreat. "We can't take this thing head-on!" Vera grabbed her scanner and scrambled to her feet, her face pale. "I've got the data! Let's move!" The team sprinted toward an alternate exit on the far side of the chamber, the sentinel's heavy footsteps thundering behind them. As they ran, the monolith's glow intensified, and the symbols on its surface began to shift and pulse faster, as if reacting to the chaos. "Whatever you did, Vera, you pissed it off," Riven shouted, firing over his shoulder at the advancing sentinel. "I didn't do anything," Vera protested, her voice strained. "This thing has a mind of its own." As they reached the exit, the chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light, and the sentinel let out a deafening roar. Lysara glanced back, her heart pounding as she saw the monolith symbols rearranging themselves into a pattern that resembled a warning. "Keep moving," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't over." The escape corridor stretched before them, its walls trembling with the distant echoes of the sentinel's thunderous pursuit. The air was thick with tension as Lysara led the team through the dimly lit passage, her sharp commands keeping them focused. "Keep moving. Don't stop for anything," she barked, her eyes darting between the shadows ahead and the growing red glow behind. Vera clutched her scanner tightly, her mind racing as she tried to process the data she'd pulled from the monolith. The symbols, the energy signatures, it all pointed to something far greater than they had anticipated. "Lysara," she called, her voice urgent. "That sentinel isn't just a guardian. It's a failsafe. The monolith. It's waking up." Lysara glanced back, her expression grim. "What does that mean for us?" "It means," Vera panted, struggling to keep up, "if we don't shut it down, the entire area could—" Her words were cut off by a deafening crash as the sentinel barreled into the corridor behind them, its massive frame barely fitting through the narrow space. Sparks flew as its armored limbs scraped against the walls, and its glowing red eyes burned with relentless focus. Riven spun around, his weapon raised. "I'll slow it down," he shouted. firing a series of plasma blasts that ricocheted harmlessly off the Sentinel's energy shield. "Don't be a hero, Riven!" Lysera snapped, grabbing his arm and pulling him forward. "We need to regroup and figure out a plan." The corridor split ahead, and Lysera made a quick decision. "Left! Go left!" she shouted, leading the team down the narrower path. The walls here were rougher, less refined, as if the corridor had been hastily carved into the rock. The Sentinel roared, its voice a metallic blend of fury and warning, and its massive clawed appendages tore through the junction, obliterating the path they had just escaped from. Dust and debris rained down, obscuring the air and adding to the chaos. "This thing is relentless," Riven growled, his weapon ready but his face betraying his frustration. "It's not going to stop." "That's because it's protecting something," Vera said, her voice shaky but resolute. She pointed to her scanner. "The data I pulled, it's incomplete, but it's clear the monolith isn't just a power source, it's a gate." "A gate to what?" Lysara demanded, her tone sharp as they pressed forward. Vera hesitated, her eyes darting between her scanner and the path ahead. "I don't know, but whatever it is, the Sentinel's job is to ensure no one activates it. If we can disable the Sentinel, we might be able to understand the monolith's purpose." "And how exactly do we do that?" Riven interjected, glancing back as the red glow of the Sentinel's eyes grew brighter, closing the gap. "Because right now it looks pretty invincible." The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness and its floor scattered with ancient, crumbling machinery. Strange, glowing conduits crisscrossed the space, pulsating faintly like veins in a living organism. "This might be our chance," Lysara said, scanning the room. "Look for anything we can use, anything to trap it or disable it." The team split up, their movements frantic as the Sentinel's footsteps grew louder. Vera focused on a console embedded in the wall, its surface covered in alien symbols that flickered erratically. "This system is linked to the monolith," she said, her fingers flying over the controls. "If I can override its directives, I might be able to shut down the Sentinel." "Do it fast," Lysera urged, taking up a defensive position near the entrance. Riven joined her, his weapon aimed at the corridor, ready to buy Vera time. The Sentinel emerged, its massive frame barely squeezing through the chamber's entrance. Its red eyes scanned the room, locking onto Vera as she worked. With a mechanical roar, it charged, its clawed limbs tearing through the ancient machinery in its path. "Vera, move!" Riven shouted, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire. The blasts slowed the Sentinel momentarily, but its shield absorbed the impact, and it pressed on undeterred. "I need more time," Vera yelled, her voice desperate as she continued to work. "The system is fighting me." Lysera activated a nearby console, hoping to divert the Sentinel's attention. The room's conduits flared brightly and a surge of energy coursed through the walls, causing the Sentinel to pause momentarily. "That's it," Vera exclaimed, seizing the opportunity. "Keep it distracted." The Sentinel turned its attention to Lysara, its movements deliberate and menacing as it advanced. Lysara stood her ground, firing precise shots at its joints, aiming to weaken its mobility. "Almost there," Vera muttered, her fingers trembling as she bypassed the final security protocols. Suddenly, the console emitted a sharp beep, and the conduits throughout the room surged with energy. The Sentinel froze mid-step, its red eyes flickering erratically. With a deafening mechanical groan, it collapsed to its knees, its limbs twitching as its energy shield dissipated. "You did it!" Riven shouted, relief washing over his face. Vera stepped back from the console, her chest heaving. "It's not over yet. The monolith, whatever it's guarding, is still active. We need to figure out what it's protecting before it's too late." Lysera nodded, her gaze fixed on the fallen Sentinel. "Then we move fast. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning. The chamber was eerily quiet, save for the occasional hiss of sparks from the Sentinel's lifeless frame. The team gathered near Vera, who stared at the console as if it held the answers to the universe. The pulsating conduits around them cast strange shadows, illuminating the group in flickering light. "Whatever this thing is guarding," Riven said, nodding toward the massive monolith visible through the chamber's far end. "It better be worth all of this." Vera didn't respond immediately. Her eyes darted across the console's symbols, now fully illuminated and forming a cohesive pattern. "This isn't just a gate or a power source," she said, her voice low but resolute. "It's a map." "A map?" Lysara repeated, stepping closer. "A map to what?" Vera hesitated, her fingers hovering over the console. "To something called the Core Nexus. It's mentioned in fragments of the database I accessed earlier. It's described as the heart of creation. If I'm reading this right, the monolith is designed to lead those who activate it to this nexus." Riven raised an eyebrow. "The heart of creation. That sounds both amazing and dangerous." "Exactly," Vera said, her tone grim. "This isn't just some treasure hunt. The Core Nexus could be the source of unimaginable power. If it falls into the wrong hands," Lysara finished her thought, "it could end entire civilizations." The team exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them. Lysara's voice cut through the silence. "We need to know more. Can you activate it?" Vera's fingers hesitated again before moving over the console. "I think so. The Sentinel's shutdown cleared most of the security layers, but once I do, there's no telling what might happen. It could alert whoever designed this place, or worse." Lysara nodded, her gaze steely. "We don't have a choice. Whatever the Core Nexus is, we can't leave it in the dark, do it." With a deep breath, Vera entered the final sequence. The conduits around the room flared to life, their pulsating light synchronizing into a rhythmic pattern. The monolith, dormant until now, began to hum with a deep resonant vibration that seemed to echo in the very bones of the team. A beam of light shot out from the top of the monolith, piercing the chamber's ceiling and disappearing into the unknown above. Symbols danced across the surface of the monolith, their shapes shifting and morphing as if telling a story. "It's incredible," Riven said, his usual sarcasm replaced by genuine awe. "But what's it doing?" Vera pointed to the symbols. "It's calculating, translating, wait." She stepped closer, squinting at the patterns. "It's showing coordinates, but not just for one location. Dozens, maybe hundreds." Lysara frowned. "Coordinates to what?" Vera's face grew pale as she realized the answer. "It's showing the locations of every core nexus across the galaxy." The air in the chamber grew thick with tension. Riven let out a low whistle. "Hundreds of these things? That's unsettling." Lysara's eyes narrowed. "And dangerous. If someone else gets their hands on this information..." Her words were cut off by a sudden surge of energy. The beam of light intensified and the chamber shook violently. The monolith's hum became a deafening roar, and the symbols on its surface began to spin faster and faster. "Something's happening!" Vera shouted, her voice barely audible over the noise. "I think it's opening a gate." The team braced themselves as a vortex of light erupted from the monolith's base, swirling and expanding until it filled the entire chamber. The energy was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a chaotic blend of colors and shapes that defied comprehension. Lysara shouted over the roar, "Is this supposed to happen?" Vera's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "I don't know, but whatever's on the other side, it's calling us." Riven, gripping his weapon tightly, glanced at Lysara. "Are we really about to walk into that?" Lysara's gaze was fixed on the vortex, her expression resolute. "We've come this far. We need to see this through. Whatever's on the other side might be the only way to understand what we're dealing with and how to stop it." Vera hesitated, her mind racing. "But what if we can't come back?" "Then we make it count," Lysara said, stepping toward the swirling light. "We find the answers, and if necessary, we fight." One by one, the team approached the vortex, its pull growing stronger with each step. As they crossed the threshold, the light engulfed them and the chamber disappeared. On the other side, a vast and alien world awaited, one that would change everything. The team tumbled out of the vortex and landed on solid ground, or what they assumed was ground. It glowed faintly beneath their feet, pulsing like the monolith's conduits, but it was translucent, almost crystalline. Above them, an endless void stretched out, filled with constellations that danced and shifted in ways that defied natural order. Where Are we? Riven muttered, slowly rising to his feet. He brushed off his armor, his expression torn between awe and unease. Vera scanned the surroundings, her hand instinctively moving to her wrist console. The readings were erratic, her device struggling to process the environment. This isn't a planet. It's a construct, a fabricated space, but it's alive, organic and mechanical at the same time. Lysara knelt, brushing her fingers over the translucent ground. It was smooth and cool, but as her hand lingered, faint patterns emerged, intricate carvings that seemed to shift and twist under her touch. It feels ancient, she said, her voice reverent, older than anything I've ever seen. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The team instinctively formed a defensive circle, weapons drawn and eyes scanning the strange landscape. The hum seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating in their chests and rattling their teeth. Then, the space around them shifted. Massive spires of crystalline light erupted from the ground, forming a circular formation. The spires glowed with an internal energy, each one pulsating in harmony with the others. Symbols, similar to those on the monolith, began to crawl up their surfaces, casting moving shadows across the team. This place, it's another kind of gateway, Vera said, her voice tinged with awe and fear. But not like the monolith. This is something more advanced, something more deliberate. Before anyone could respond, a figure emerged from the void. At first it was a silhouette, humanoid in form but shimmering like liquid metal. As it stepped closer, details became clearer. Its body was sleek and angular, its face a smooth, featureless mask save for two glowing orbs where eyes should have been. "Identify yourselves," the figure intoned. Its voice was neither male nor female, but a layered resonance, as if multiple voices spoke in unison. Lysara stepped forward, her posture cautious but confident. "We're explorers," she said. "We came through the monolith seeking answers. We mean no harm." The figure tilted its head slightly, the glowing orbs narrowing. "You have activated an ancient path," it said. "Few have crossed the threshold in eons. Why have you come?" Vera stepped up beside Lysara, her voice steady despite the unease radiating through her. "The monolith revealed something called the Core Nexus. We need to understand it, what it is, and why it's so dangerous." The figure was silent for a long moment, its glowing orbs flickering. "The Core Nexus is the foundation of all creation," it finally said. "A convergence of energies that bind existence together. It is neither good nor evil, but holds the power to shape worlds, or destroy them." Riven muttered under his breath, "Great. A cosmic doomsday device." The figure's head snapped toward him, its glowing orbs flaring briefly. "The Core Nexus is not a weapon. It is a source of infinite potential, but in the wrong hands, its misuse could unravel the fabric of reality." Lysara took a cautious step forward. "And whose hands are we talking about? Is someone trying to control it?" The figure hesitated. "There are those who seek the Nexus," it said. "Some to protect, others to exploit. Your arrival has disrupted the balance. They will know you are here." "Perfect," Riven said with a grimace. "Now we're targets in a cosmic chess game." The spires around them pulsed brighter, and the ground beneath their feet began to shift. The figure stepped back, its form flickering slightly. "If you seek to understand the Core Nexus, you must prove yourselves worthy. Follow the path, and you will find the answers you seek. But beware, others are already in pursuit." "Others?" Vera asked, her voice sharp. "Who are they?" The figure began to dissolve, its glowing orbs dimming. "Seek the Nexus. The truth will reveal itself." Its voice echoed as it vanished completely, leaving the team alone once more. The spires around them began to rotate slowly, and the crystalline ground beneath them brightened. A pathway formed ahead, stretching into the shimmering void. Lysara turned to the group, her expression resolute. "Looks like we have no choice. We follow the path." "Do we ever have a choice?" Riven muttered, checking his weapon. "Let's get this over with." The team stepped onto the glowing path, the spires fading behind them. The void ahead seemed endless, and the hum of energy grew louder with each step. Whatever awaited them, they knew one thing. The stakes had never been higher. The glowing path twisted and turned, suspended in the endless void. Each step sent ripples of light spreading outward, as if the pathway itself was alive and reacting to their presence. The hum of energy around them intensified, resonating deep in their bones. It felt like they were walking on the edge of existence, the boundary between reality and something far greater. Does it feel heavier to anyone else? Riven asked, his voice uneasy as he adjusted his gear, like the air itself is pressing down. It's the density of energy, Vera explained, her eyes scanning her wrist console. The levels here are off the charts. This place, whatever it is, exists at a nexus of raw power. It's almost overwhelming. Lysera stopped and looked ahead. The path curved sharply, and in the distance, a massive structure loomed. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, an enormous sphere of shifting, pulsating light, surrounded by intricate interlocking rings that moved in a hypnotic rhythm. It floated in the void, anchored by nothing, yet radiating a presence that was both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. That must be it, Lysera said, her voice hushed. The Core Nexus. As they drew closer, the pathway widened into a vast platform, its surface etched with glowing runes that pulsed in time with the rings around the sphere. The hum of energy became a low roar, and the air seemed to vibrate with an almost musical resonance. The team instinctively slowed their pace, their movements cautious and deliberate. Standing on the platform were figures. At first, they appeared as shadows against the brilliance of the Nexus, but as the team approached, their forms became clear. They were humanoid yet distinctly alien, tall, elegant beings with elongated limbs and shimmering skin that refracted the light around them. Their eyes glowed softly, and they wore robes that seemed to flow like liquid, changing colors with each step. One of them stepped forward, its gaze fixed on the team. "You have come far," it said, its voice melodic and layered, echoing as if it spoke from multiple planes of existence. "Few have reached the threshold of the Core Nexus." Lysera took a deep breath and stepped forward. "We seek answers," she said firmly. "What is the Nexus, and why is it connected to the monoliths? What danger does it hold?" The being tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "The Nexus is creation itself," it replied. "A source of limitless energy and potential, bound by the laws of existence. It can shape reality, alter the fabric of worlds. But such power is not without consequence." Another figure stepped forward, its movements fluid and deliberate. "The monoliths were meant to guard the Nexus, to ensure its energy remained contained and its purpose undisturbed. But something has changed. The balance has been disrupted." "Disrupted by what?" Vera asked, her tone sharp. "Or who?" The first being's glow dimmed slightly, a sign of unease. "There are forces that seek to control the Nexus. They believe its power can be harnessed, weaponized. If they succeed, the repercussions will be catastrophic, not just for your world, but for all existence." The team exchanged uneasy glances. Riven muttered, "Why is it always about catastrophic repercussions?" Lysera ignored him and focused on the beings. "What do we need to do to stop them?" The second being gestured toward the Nexus. "The Core Nexus must be stabilized. Its energy is raw, untamed. To restore balance, its essence must be aligned with its original purpose, but doing so will require great sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Lysera pressed, her voice firm but wary. Before the beings could answer, the platform trembled violently. The intricate rings around the Nexus began to spin faster, their rhythm becoming chaotic. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the void, a sound that was neither mechanical nor natural. It was a warning. "They are coming," one of the beings said, its voice tinged with urgency. "The ones who seek to corrupt the Nexus. You must decide now. Will you face them or will you flee?" Lysera turned to her team, her expression resolute. "We didn't come this far to run. If we're here, it's because we're meant to stop this. Vera nodded, her hand tightening on her weapon. Agreed. We fight. Riven sighed, rolling his shoulders. Of course we do. Let's get it over with. The beings stepped back, their forms glowing brighter. Very well, one of them said. The Nexus will test your resolve, prove your worth, and the path to balance will reveal itself. Fail, and all will be lost. As the words faded, the tremors intensified. Shadows began to emerge from the void, dark, menacing shapes that pulsed with malevolent energy. They moved toward the platform, their forms shifting and writhing like living nightmares. Lysara raised her weapon, her voice steady and commanding. Positions now! Whatever these things are, they're not getting past us. The team formed a defensive line, their weapons trained on the encroaching darkness. The hum of the Nexus grew louder, its energy swirling chaotically. The battle for the Core Nexus and the fate of existence was about to begin.